Administrator with the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. And this is the fiscal year 2025 Pre-Apprenticeship and Career Education Technical Assistance Workshop. So just a few housekeeping items before we begin. First of all, this workshop is being recorded, and we will share the recording after the workshop with everyone who has attended and/or registered for the workshop. Since we are recording, we ask that everyone remains on mute throughout the presentation and that you type any questions that you may have into that Teams chat box at the top. We'll address all questions at the end of the workshop and also open up the floor for anything additional if you prefer to just speak your question. All right, so let's get started with an overview of our office and a little bit about registered apprenticeship as well. If you could hit next, please. Perfect. So in March of 2018, Governor Murphy announced the development of the first Office of Apprenticeship in New Jersey, as well as the creation of the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. Next slide, please. The overall mission in creating our office is to build the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, which is accomplished by the Office of Apprenticeship working closely with USDOL and serving as a one-stop shop for employers, nonprofits, secondary and post-secondary institutions interested in developing apprenticeship opportunities, supporting new and expanding upon existing pre-apprenticeships and USDOL registered apprenticeship programs in New Jersey, establishing pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs in non-traditional high-growth occupations or sectors, better aligning secondary, post-secondary, adult education, and occupational training to meet labor demands unique to New Jersey and develop career pathways that lead to economically sustainable wages, helping apprentices earn college credits, access robust career counseling, and increase diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs. And lastly, by removing economic barriers to training and upskilling through targeted investments. Next slide, please. The New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. So the vision of the NJAN is to develop sustainable talent pipelines by aligning pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs with needs of employers, training providers, and job seekers. The NJAN is focused on driving economic development through skills and educational attainment, concentrating efforts on sector-focused, demand-driven training and education programs that lead to better paying careers, advanced credentials, and skills attainment. And finally, developing an ecosystem that provides multiple years of economic support to businesses and individuals for occupational skills training, leading to sustainable wages and upward mobility for employers and increasing talent pipelines for employers. Next slide, please. So what is registered apprenticeship? The definition under the Code of Federal Regulations 29.6 is registered apprenticeship program means registered and approved by USDOL and provides classroom and on-the-job training in an occupation recognized as an apprenticeable trade and meets the program standards of enrollment and graduation. So registered apprenticeship, it's basically essentially a type of training model that works in conjunction with employment, where apprentices are earning while learning the necessary skills for the trade. And USDOL provides approval for the registered apprenticeship program, similar to how accreditation works with a degree program for colleges. This helps to ensure that the skills and training that the apprentices receive is consistent for natural application in employment, basically for that occupation. Next slide, please. So registered apprenticeship programs consist of 5 main components. First, you have the employer or industry involvement. So when developing a program, input from employers and industry leaders is used to help guide the training outline for that occupation. As a result, the program structure is then uniform with any organization who adopts that outline for the development of their own registered apprenticeship program. Number 2, you have the related technical instruction. So just like most training programs, registered apprenticeship consists of classroom learning to teach fundamentals and advanced skills for that occupation. Number 3, you have the sponsor or employer component for the on-the-job training component of the program. So the on-the-job training is basically the employment aspect of registered apprenticeship programs, and it's utilized to reinforce the classroom learning by presenting the real-world scenarios for apprentices to apply the skills they've learned in the classroom. Number 4, of course, you have the apprentices who take part in the program and the training. And then finally, number 5, there's a progressive wage structure for skills gains. This is the component that USDOL helps sponsors to determine when they're approving their programs, and basically it incentivizes apprentices to develop their skills while also fostering that employer-employee relationship. Next slide, please. So here's a quick overview of the accomplishments of registered apprenticeship in New Jersey. With our current figures, there currently are 9,488 active apprentices in the state from 6,783. There are 1,434 total registered programs in the state from 611. Since Governor Murphy took office in January of 2018, New Jersey has registered 823 new programs, which is a 100% statewide increase. There have been 21,105 new apprentices hired, 10,434 new industry-recognized certificates of completion have been issued. According to data from the last quarter of 2017, net apprentices increased by approximately 2,705 from 6,783 apprentices, which is a statewide moving average that includes entrances and exits. And this growth trend accounts for a 40% net increase statewide for active apprentices. Next slide, please. So that was an overview of our office and registered apprenticeship. Next, we'll focus on pre-apprenticeship programs and the specifics of the PACE grant. So pre-apprenticeship and career education, PACE. The mission of PACE is to better align post-secondary adult education and occupational training to meet labor demands unique to New Jersey. It's also to create a pipeline of qualified individuals and enable them to transition into suitable career pathways. We also want to present opportunities to underrepresented or disadvantaged populations and remove any barriers that they may have to attend training. PACE also wants to drive economic development through skills and educational attainment. And PACE also seeks to promote the value of pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship programs. Next, please. So quality pre-apprenticeship elements. So let's first start by providing clarity as to what a pre-apprenticeship program is. So pre-apprenticeship programs are preparatory training programs. They occur prior to a participant starting a registered apprenticeship program. The key to remember here is that pre-apprenticeship programs prepare individuals for success in a registered apprenticeship program. This is accomplished basically by providing some foundational occupational training, you have job exposure, workforce readiness, basically anything that you think will prepare the individuals for successful entry into a registered apprenticeship position. Pre-apprenticeship programs also can include prerequisites for training for starting the registered apprenticeship program, such as there may be like licensing requirements that are necessary for an apprentice to enter the job site. So that would constitute a pre-apprenticeship type training. The United States Department of Labor released an employment and training advisory called 102323 to define what makes a quality pre-apprenticeship program, and it includes a couple different things. So we have, first of all, are the partnerships with registered apprenticeship sponsors. So partnering with registered apprenticeship sponsors ensures that pre-apprenticeship training aligns with the needs of the sponsors and anticipated registered apprenticeship occupational training that ultimately the apprentice will be a part of. So with those partners, you would develop an approved training and curriculum and determine the entry and or matriculation agreements for placement of the pre-apprenticeship program completers. This element cannot be understated, as the goal of the PACE program basically, and the contractual obligation if you are awarded, is to place your program completers into a quality placement, ideally being a registered apprenticeship program sponsor, like placement with a sponsor. So it's important to have those discussions with your partners up front to ensure that their willingness to collaborate with you on the grant. It's also a requirement of the grant that applicants have an established connection to at least one registered apprenticeship sponsor that is willing to hire completers prior to you submitting the application. There's a sample commitment letter or form that you can use to supply that partner with for them to fill out, and that's found within this presentation. We also, after the workshop, will send you a resource document that can be used when you're talking to potential partners to better understand the roles and expectations that the partner will have if they participate with you in the grant. Secondly, quality pre-apprenticeship programs consist of strategies for long-term success, i.e. the sustainability through partnerships. So successful programs will collaborate with partners to promote registered apprenticeships as the preferred program for creating skilled workforce and development of career pathways. Another element for a quality pre-apprenticeship program is access to appropriate support services, that one-stop connection. So an important element for success for the participants in a pre-apprenticeship program is reducing any barriers to attendance. So by providing support services such as those available through the one-stop centers or provided through grant funding, this helps to encourage participation and therefore leads to successful programming. Next, we have the promote greater use of registered apprenticeship. So not only from an employer standpoint, where registered apprenticeship is framed as a viable method for training and maintaining a workforce, but also from the participant standpoint, presenting an alternative career or education option, especially to those from underrepresented or underserved populations who may not have that type of exposure to those programs. And then lastly, we have the meaningful hands-on training that does not displace paid employees. So quality pre-apprenticeships will also include hands-on training, which ensures that participants gain exposure to real-life applications of the skills that are learned and provides training similar to that of a registered apprenticeship program. Therefore, again, preparing them for those types of programs when they ultimately will enter them. You'll notice at the bottom of the page, we have a link to the USDOL's 1023 document, and that provides a lot more in details about those different quality pre-apprenticeship elements if you need to refer to that at all. Next slide, please. Okay. Pre-apprenticeship programs that target high growth, high vacancy, or emerging industries are highly encouraged to apply. So they're including but not limited to advanced manufacturing, biopharma/life sciences, energy, utility, and infrastructure, retail, hospitality, and tourism, financial services/insurance, transportation, logistics, and distribution, information technology/cybersecurity, renewable energy/green economy, healthcare, STEM, construction and building trades, including lead abatement, public service, education service, and early childhood education. So we encourage applications from this industry sector, but if your industry falls outside of one of those listed, that does not preclude you from applying. You can still apply. Organizations that were awarded in fiscal year 2024 round 2 PACE contracts are not eligible to apply for this round of PACE. Round 1 applications are open to those that were not funded, however, in round 2 of 24, as well as any new applicants. Next slide, please. Okay, so PACE aims to strengthen access to registered apprenticeships for individuals by recruiting from targeted populations and providing appropriate services to enable participation. So there's some targeted populations where greater weight will be given to proposals that are able to recruit from the following populations. Of those, we have women, minority, youth, and unemployed, vocational school or post-secondary students, ex-offenders, veterans, persons with disabilities, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act or WIOA eligible individuals, and underrepresented populations. As mentioned before, an element of a quality pre-apprenticeship program is to offer support to participants to reduce those barriers. So when developing your budget proposals, you can request funding for supportive services. And examples of those types of services include childcare, transportation, obtaining a driver's license, expungement, communicating criminal backgrounds to employers, housing services, addressing substance abuse, obtaining high school equivalency diploma or GED, mentoring, guidance counseling, or financial literacy. Next slide, please. Okay, so program structure ideas. So to aid in developing your proposals, we put together a suggested outline for a successful program of how it might be structured to allow for enough time to meet the anticipated contractual outcomes. The contracts, just so you know, for this grant are expected to be 18 months, and they're anticipated to start February 1st of 2025 and run through July 31st of 2026. So what you would look at is for months 1 through 3, you would have your recruitment and your organization, where you're focusing on organizing your program and beginning your recruitment or screening practices to start to get participants into your program. Months 4 through 14 is when you would have the bulk of the programming, where you're going to have your training and support. So that's the administration of training. You're providing assessments to participants for support. You're continuing to recruit for any additional cycles of training if you do have multiple cycles, if that's how your programming is. And then months 15 through 18 is when you would have the placements. So the completers of the PACE program must all receive a quality placement outcome as defined in this NGO. So those applicants awarded should have strong partnerships, as we mentioned before, with registered apprenticeship sponsors, also employers, and or if your proposal is applicable, post-secondary vocational schools to ensure that placements occur in a timely manner after the training is completed. So placements must be achieved prior to the end of the 18-month contract to reflect good performance and compliance. But the placements don't have to necessarily occur in the last 3 months of the grant. They can occur at any time throughout the grant cycle, but definitely before the end of your 18-month contract. That's what you're contractually obligated to do. So you need to make sure that you have very strong partnerships in order to meet that expectation and that contractual requirement if awarded. Again, this outline, it's just a suggestion to how to kind of structure things, just to get you thinking about how to have your programming, but it's not required that you necessarily follow this. Next slide, please. Funding incentives and expectations. So stipends. Applicants can include need-based stipends in their budgets to enable participation. The stipends is not a wage. It's intended to cover incidental costs incurred while attending the pre-apprenticeship training program. Payments can be paid to the participants on a weekly or biweekly basis and cannot exceed $250 per week. As far as the outcomes, PACE grantees will be expected to graduate at least 80% of the participants and to facilitate placement into one of the following quality outcomes. So you need to have a minimum of 25% of your completers placed into a USDOL registered apprenticeship program. The remainder can be placed into either employment related to the pre-apprenticeship training received at a rate of no lower than $16 per hour, or they can be placed into a post-secondary college or occupational specific career training program consistent with the pre-apprenticeship program. Keep in mind that word, consistent with the pre-apprenticeship program, for both the employment or the post-secondary or additional training elements. So if they're training in construction and they go to school for English, that doesn't have anything to do with the pre-apprenticeship program. We want to make sure everything's consistent. That's what the training is for. Funding for FY 2025 round 1 is expected to be $2 million. Of course, a contingent upon availability of funds. Competitive proposals will have a maximum cost per head of $12,000. So that means when you're looking at your overall budget, you add up all your budget line items, you would need and divide that by the number of people that you're serving. That amount needs to be $12,000 or less. So an example would be if you plan to serve 10 individuals through your grant, then your budget can be no more than $120,000 overall. So that concludes an overview of the PACE program and pre-apprenticeships. I'll hand the presentation over to Lauren Kremper DiFilippo, who will review the application process with you. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Kremper DiFilippo, and I am the contract administrator who oversees the PACE grant. So I would be working with you if you were awarded through your grant period. So can I have the next slide? Next one. So the first steps, if you're considering applying, you want to ensure that you're an eligible entity to apply, and you can check that list on page 12 of the NGO if you haven't seen it enough in the emails sent today. Your authorized official, which would be called the AO, registers in IGX. That information is outlined on page 23 of the NGO. That AO submits the letter of intent via email. There will be a template we'll go over, but it's on information's on page 23 and 24 of the NGO. And once DOL receives that letter of intent, we will check IGX to make sure that the person you indicated as the authorized official is actually registered, and anyone else that is listed on the letter of intent, that person that might be managing the grant, also needs to be registered in IGX. We'll provide the access to the application, and we will send you in an email a user guide and the logons for the people that need it based on the letter of intent. Also very important, and not necessarily in this order, it's very important that you obtain your tax clearance certificate from the New Jersey Division of Taxation. And you could check pages 26 and 31 of the NGO. Don't wait on this certificate. It should really be listed as number one, because sometimes it can take a lot of time to get the certificate back from Division of Taxation. And you also want to register with the New Jersey Department of Treasury, which is through NJ Start, and that information is on page 31. Next slide. So here is the template for the letter of intent. It's very straightforward and self-explanatory. You're just giving us all your information for your business, and who is the authorized official, and who will be managing as the main point of contact for the PACE grant. Next slide. The proposal components, these are your required documents, and all required information must be submitted in the IGX system by the due date. The applicant information, the counties you're going to serve, your consortium partners, any previous funding, PACE deliverables, your executive summary, your program narrative, your implementation plan, the tax clearance certificate, your budget summary and details, and any miscellaneous attachments you wish to upload. Next slide. So let's take a look at some of the elements. So the proposal, that's your executive summary. It's a maximum of 3 pages, and it'll include your projected project plan chart, which we will look at in a minute, and the overview of your proposal highlighting key points in relation to this NGO. Your program narrative is a maximum of 20 pages. It details the objectives, your plan structure, and anticipated quality outcomes, which include your recruitment strategy, your training design and outline, work experiences, core partnership and relationships, such as connections to registered apprenticeship, your connection to employer partners, and post-secondary placement after the pre-apprenticeship completion, if that's applicable. Any support services that you will provide, expected outcomes for the participants, your administrative responsibilities, and your past performance in any previous grants. Next slide. So here's that attachment, the projected project plan. It's a chart that's belongs with your executive summary, and you're going to report on each quarter of the grant. So the information that you're going to provide is how many participants will be enrolled, and that's the total number of PACE participants, both new and previously enrolled. And then you're going to break out your expenditures. So you're going to provide the estimated expenditure of PACE grant funds for each quarter, which will be your personnel, which is salary and fringe benefits, any non-personnel costs such as marketing, office supplies, etc., and then direct student costs, which would be things such as books, instruction materials and supplies, stipends, safety equipment, etc. Next slide. And now an in-depth look of the implementation plan. That's going to be a maximum of 10 pages. You're going to describe how the training plan will be implemented. And that is what Tammy described earlier on the slide you can refer back to on that schedule of month 1 through 18. Duly noted that your plan does not have to be 18 months long, but the contract is for 18 months. Your project schedule is to include timelines for benchmarks and program completion, as well as recruitment and placement dates. And if you have multiple training rounds, to include the estimated start and end dates. The retention support strategy and alternate placements. Your outcome timeline, so you'll describe the anticipated outcomes and time frame for placements, and then your program sustainability plan, which is your strategy for program continuance absence of this PACE grant funding. Next slide. The evaluation criteria. All applications are considered new applications and will be evaluated based on quality, comprehensiveness, completeness, accuracy, and appropriateness to the NGO. This is a competitive process, and applications are reviewed by a selection committee using a pre-established set of requirements. Awarded applicants will have administrative responsibilities, including but not limited to the archiving of records, completing monthly reports, and attending required meetings. Next slide. And now for IGX, I'm going to turn this back over to Tammy or Al?
Al, I got
Al. To Al.
it. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. The next set of slides that we're going to go through are going to run through the IGX system. Two parts. There's the registration, which is what you're seeing now. When you organize your LOI and the names and emails that you list on that for your AO or for your administrative person, they have to complete the registration in IGX before you send the letter of intent. So that way you're already registered in the system and we can attach you to the grant so you can complete the application. So if you are a new user, when you go to the njdol.intelligrants.com, you will see a new user. Click here at the bottom of the screen underneath the giant login button. When the registration pops up, fill it out as required. And then we ask that for the very last box, it says, please enter the program that you're applying for. Please enter the word PACE into that, because what that allows us to do is search through the entire grant system that's used for lots of grants to find your particular login credentials to attach you to the grant. So once you've filled out the registration and you've put the word PACE down on the bottom, you click the register button and that will submit your registration. Then you can send your LOI and that'll allow us to attach that grant, the PACE grant, to you. That way, when you go to complete the application, which we're going to go to next, you have access to it. So next slide, please. Okay, so once you've completed your LOI and your registration, and we've sent you back the email with the guide on how to complete the application, you're going to go back to the njdol.intelligrants.com site, and you're going to put in your username and your password, and then click the login button. Next slide, please. That's going to bring you to your dashboard. And under the My Opportunity box, you're going to click on the filter, and it's going to open up options for searching. Next slide, please. When the filters open up, you're going to have a drop-down selection for the provider. When that happens, you're going to select the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development, NJDOL, from the drop-down menu. And then for the name, you're going to write PACE. And then you're going to click Search. When you click Search, in My Opportunities, the PACE grant application will appear. Next slide, please. When you click that hyperlink and you open up the PACE application for round 1 of 2025, it's going to give you the program description and the agreement language that you would select Agree to, and that'll take you to your dashboard again, where you will now see under your tasks the application for the grant. Next slide, please. After selecting Agree, you'll be brought to your landing page for the grant application. All of the pages that need to be completed are listed on the left-hand side under Application. So all these light blue pages that have the different page descriptions is what you will be completing. As you go through the application, you'll have the ability to navigate to different pages in the application by clicking the desired page on the left side, or some pages allow you to go to the next one through the current page that you're on. Next slide, please. When you're ready to submit the application, use the navigation panel on the left side and scroll down to Status Options. Then you'll select the application status to begin submitting this mission. If document has a validation page that appears. That means that there's errors on one of the pages that you've completed that need to be corrected before the application can be submitted. You'll need to revisit that page with the errors, make the revisions, and then submit the application. After selecting application submitted, a box will appear asking you to confirm that you want to submit the application. Click OK to finish the submission, or cancel if you need to go back and add more information or make more edits. I want to stress on this too, that if you need to make a revision to your application after it's submitted, under the status options, you're going to see a cancel application button. Do not select that to try to open up your application again. That will cancel your application and all of the work that you've done. You would need to email our unit at the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov, which is located at the end of this email or this presentation, and ask us to send this back to you. And this can only be done prior to the deadline date. We cannot send it back after the deadline date. I just wanted to make that clear. Next page, please. Okay, the important dates for you to remember. Your submission letter of intent and the registration into IGX must be completed before you can start the application. Noon, December 13th, 2024 is the deadline for the letter of intent. So it's December 13th at noon. It is not the end of the business day, and we do not anticipate moving either of these deadlines for any reason. So it's very important that you do not wait, that you do your LOI and your registration into IGX to be able to access the application. The application is due noon, December 20th, 2024. That deadline will not be moved either. And it's noon, again, not the end of the business day. There is a week between your LOI and the application due date. That being said, your application may take longer than a week to complete, so you do not want to wait till the last minute in order to do the LOI and try to complete a well-made application within the week. And then final decisions on the awards will be communicated to the applicants no later than 45 days following the panel review. Next slide, please. Okay, the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, its director is James Manning. His contact information is here if you would need it. Our chief of the program unit would be Bill Sarbuck. He is not here today, but when you email the general email below, which is the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov, that email actually sends an email to Bill Sarbuck and our entire unit. So it's pretty much the standard that if you want a response to a question, email the apprenticeship unit email, because all of us receive it, all 5 of us. That way, if somebody's not in the office that particular day, you can get a response from somebody who is. Next slide, please. And questions. I know there's a lot of them typed in the chat that we're going to review. And for this part, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy so she can answer any of the questions.
I think Lauren's going to read them off to me if you don't mind, Lauren.
Yep. All right, first question. Are DSP, direct support professionals, working hands-on with persons with disabilities an acceptable industry category under healthcare?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Just,
Is there,
I guess just make sure that there's a registered apprenticeship that would align with that. So you need to make sure you have a partnership with a registered apprenticeship sponsor that has a program in that particular area.
is there a required number of apprentices in a program?
Nope, you can serve as little as or as many as you want.
Okay. In case contact info, wait. I guess this person just wants, I don't know. What if they start a business?
I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
Moa,
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Pamela, do you want to unmute yourself? Let me see if I can get you unmuted. You should be able to unmute yourself now, Pamela, if you want to
Hi,
do that.
yes, thank you. Just curious, you mentioned that the person has to connect to basically an apprenticeship of or a pre-apprenticeship of equal greater value, eh, go to a apprentice, become gainfully employed at those levels, or become roll into a registered apprentice. I was wondering if a fourth option was what if they start a business instead? Would that qualify?
What if the participant of your pre-apprenticeship program starts a business?
Correct.
Unfortunately, that's not one of the quality outcomes that we have listed within this NGO. So it needs to be either they gain entry into a registered apprenticeship program, they gain employment that's related to the pre-apprenticeship training, or they continue their education in an area similar to the pre-apprenticeship training. Thanks. Thank you for clarifying.
Can applicants apply as a consortium?
Yes. Just ensure that you're not like if you have a lot of different partners, that they're not partnering with multiple other applicants for the grant, because that can get a little bit messy, and I don't think that's something that we would allow. Just so that one little caveat, just keep in mind.
And Mr. Floyd would want to perhaps be the lead agent. Whoever the lead agent is of the grant would have to apply.
Correct.
So a partner can't apply on behalf of. What if we're already registered in IGX for another grant?
Then you don't need to re-register. Whatever login you have would essentially be the same one.
Can a nonprofit have multiple user registered in IGX portal to collectively work on the PACE application?
Absolutely, yep. And when you submit your letter of intent, if there's more people than are listed on the letter of intent that need access, just let us know and we can grant them access as well.
But they should register them first.
Of course, they would need to be registered. Yep.
Would you support a multi-agency project partnerships with more than one CBO?
I think this is similar to the consortium question, so yes. There would just need to be one lead agency, as Lauren had mentioned.
Does pre-apprenticeship course have an hourly requirement?
Not while they're in the course. So if you're going to pay them a wage while they're attending the training, no. That's whatever you determine if that's an option for your program. But placement, once they've completed the training, if they go into the employment option or a registered apprenticeship, then it would be at that $16 an hour minimum.
Is it okay if the nonprofit currently has NJ Build and Youth Build grants?
Yes, just be aware that you would need a whole new group of participants to train under the PACE grant. And bear in mind your capacity to manage multiple grants. That can get a little bit tricky and cumbersome. So make sure that you have the support within your organization to do that if you're awarded.
I think this really was answered. Can you apply for more than one NJDOL grant at a time?
Yes, you can. Yep, same kind of thing though. Just keep in mind that your capacity to handle all of that, because it can become a lot. And it can get confusing because, especially with this, we have gains and pace going on right now. And the contracts are going to be starting at the same time, so it can get confusing as to what's going where. And obviously each grant has their own set of requirements too, so keep that in mind when you're developing your proposal to not confuse language because they are different.
Is it considered placement if a pre-apprentice graduate student immediately enters an apprentice training program?
As a graduate, yes. So if they go through your pre-apprenticeship program and they graduate and then they go into a registered apprenticeship program right away, that's ideal. That's what we want. So yeah, that's perfect. That's a placement.
So applicants can be already employed with us, correct, as long as they are partnering in our training program.
Do you mean participants or applicants? Maybe Eric, if you don't mind, unmuting yourself and just explaining a little bit what you mean. Eric
Correct.
Reed?
So let's just take, for example, construction workers that are already employed with us or had just came on. As long as they're participating in our training program, they should be eligible as applicants, correct?
So as a participant in your program, so in the construction industry though, don't they go right into a registered apprenticeship program, or is there a pre-apprenticeship element that would come into play that you're developing?
We're currently developing it.
Okay, then as long as they're not already in a registered apprenticeship program, because that would kind of like inverse the order of
Okay.
things for this, if that
Right,
makes
and they
sense.
wouldn't be.
Yeah, so like for example, we've had a grantee in the past who would train individuals on boosting like their mathematical skills, which was needed for one of the construction trades, and that was how they developed their pre-apprenticeship program. And then they would funnel those participants once they completed into their registered apprenticeship program, once they had those skills boosted that were needed. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
What is the date for the beginning of the grant?
The contract is anticipated to start February 1st of 2025.
When will we receive the slides and meeting recording from today's session?
We hope by tomorrow, but at the latest next week.
Can the apprenticeship be within the same organization?
Yes, so you mean if you're developing a pre-apprenticeship program in anticipation of the participants completing and then going into your registered apprenticeship program? Absolutely. Yep.
Do participants have be both trained and placed during the grant period? Is completion the trigger and placement?
Yes. Yeah, so placement needs to occur within your contract period, the 18 months. So you would train them in the pre-apprenticeship training, however you're outlining that with your partnerships with your employers and your registered apprenticeship sponsors. And then you would place them into those quality placements once they've completed. Yes.
Can you provide more details about the requirement for working with a registered apprenticeship sponsor? What if they are able to get jobs right after pre-apprenticeship and don't need to move into a registered apprenticeship?
So this is a pre-apprenticeship grant, right? So our goal is to try and align the training and the pipeline for individuals to go into a registered apprenticeship program after they've completed that training. So that's why we have the requirement that you partner with at least one registered apprenticeship sponsor, so that some of your participants, at the very least, a minimum of 25% of them will go into a registered apprenticeship program after completing the training. If they're able to get jobs right after the pre-apprenticeship, they can't just get any employment, right? And it's really supposed to be on the applicants or the grantees to make sure that they have partnerships that have placements for them within employment. So it can't just be, okay, well, they completed the training and they're going to go on to work at Ruby Tuesdays. I don't even know if that's a restaurant anymore. I shouldn't use that. But it needs to be related to the employment, and usually the applicant or the grantee is kind of responsible for that placement. They have the partnerships with those employers that say there's projected openings for the time that the individual will be completing the training, and they're willing to hire them. That's what's going to help the application.
That is everything in the chat. If anyone wants to verbally ask a question.
I do have a question. This is Eddie. And that's a follow-on to registering in IGX. I do have an account already, but I don't see the PACE as an opportunity on my dashboard. So do I need to request that from you all, or how do you notice open that opportunity within my pre-existing registration so that I can submit my LOI and application?
So the LOI is the trigger to us that you need access to the application. It's not just an open-ended thing.
Gotcha.
We individually give access. So that's why those two kind of things have to happen in tandem. So either you have to register in IGX if you're not registered already, and you have to submit the LOI to tell us, hey, you're raising your hand, please give me access to the application. So,
Understood.
yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Suzanne?
Yeah, hi, I just wanted to get further clarification. I was the person who asked the question about what triggers the payment, because like if we have training that doesn't fully take place during the grant period but ends during the grant period and the person is placed during the grant period, that would constitute an eligible participant for payment under the grant, yes or no?
No, everything needs to take place within your contract period. So anything
Okay.
that's outside of that, you wouldn't be able to bill for or report activity on because it's not within your contract performance period.
But I guess does the full part of the training from end to end have to take place, or if the bulk of it takes place, is that okay?
The
All
full
of it.
amount, the full of it should take place within your contract
Okay.
period. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Thank you.
There's another question in the chat. Please confirm that an employer does not have to be a registered apprenticeship.
No, they don't have to be. That is one of the quality placements. You could have placement into employment. But it needs to be related to whatever they're receiving the training on. Again, with the example of going and someone getting a job in the restaurant industry who may be going to pre-apprenticeship training for construction, they're not related at all. So that's not really a quality placement because you just wasted all that time with the training on construction for something that they're not going to use. So it just needs to be related. So keep that in mind when you're partnering with employers.
How many awards are you anticipating?
We don't have a definitive amount. There's a $2 million pool to work from. It's a competitive process. We had like, upwards of 80 people on the call today. So we try to fund as many as we can, but you know, it's ultimately competitive. So try to put your best foot forward and best application.
Is there a maximum number of pre-apprentices?
No. Just keep in mind what your capacity is to realistically place individuals once they've completed.
But a quarter of placements should be in at least one registered apprenticeship program.
Correct. That is a requirement of this grant. Yep. So you can't just have employer partners. It needs to be a registered apprenticeship partner, and you can also have employer partners or post-secondary partners.
Is somebody trying to talk?
Yes, this is Marilyn, Montclair State. My question is an additional clarifying question. If students are registered for coursework during the summer, but that coursework doesn't end until July 31st, is that not something that can be an accountable expenditure? Is that what you're saying? Or it's okay because you have to pay for the courses before they can enroll and take them? So if they're registered for the course, the tuition is paid prior to July 31st. Is that acceptable?
It would still be something you could expense, but are you going to be able to meet your contract requirements? Because you're supposed to place everybody by the end of your contract, which it's supposed to end July 31st of 2026. So if they're just
Okay.
ending July 31st, then that doesn't leave you any time for placements at all, unless they're lined up ready to go the minute they finish.
Which is possible,
It's
especially
possible,
if they're
sure.
paraprofessionals, we can do that. So,
Mhm.
okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Is there an average award size you're anticipating?
Nope, we don't have any specific award size in mind. We funded all sorts of different amounts throughout the years.
Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question, whether in the chat or vocally? Okay. Oh, I missed the answer of how many awards.
We don't have a number of awards. We've funded all sorts of different amounts, different number of grantees throughout the years. It just depends on the pool that we get. But all right, I just want to reiterate those deadlines again. So IGX registration and submitting your LOI no later than noon on December 13th. But if you're even considering applying for this grant, you know, maybe internal discussions have to take place before you can finalize if that's an option for you. But if you might even have like a little inkling thinking about doing it, just submit that stuff right away. It doesn't hurt to have your registration in there. It doesn't hurt to have your LOI submitted if you change your mind. You just want to get that in before that deadline. And then the deadline for the application, again, it's going to be noon on December 20th. Don't wait until the last minute. This is a tech system. Issues happen. You could have an internet outage that could prevent you from being able to do what you need to do. You could run into errors that you weren't anticipating, and then you can miss the deadline. We are very strict with those deadlines and really don't extend them unless there's a really, really extenuating circumstance, but even that is rare. So do yourself, you put your best foot forward and give yourself enough time to fill everything out, make sure that you can check in case there's any errors that come up and submit it. Of course, our Heather, if you can go back one slide, just want to reiterate our contact information. So if you have any general inquiries, we can all be reached at that apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov. So if there's any other questions that come up after this presentation, feel free to reach out to us that way and one of us will get back to you. Oh, I just saw another message come in. Is there a way to find registered apprenticeship sponsors? Yes, the USDOL has a website where you can do a search for sponsors. We can include that in the materials that we send you following this call. If Lauren, if you want to make a note of that, we can send them the link for that. Okay, well, we'll be sending you the resource documents that we mentioned throughout the presentation, and we'll send you a copy of the recording and this presentation. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our general inbox and we'll get back to you. But thank you all for your participation today, and I hope you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
And then there were 4. Did we stop the recording? There we go.